Bingo.
Boom!
Whoa!
Boom! Boom!
I feel like my frame rate's a little worse than usual. I felt lately that my computer's a little worse for wear. I can't say why.
Is it because of this thing?
No, I can't imagine.
Oh, no. Okay.
We'll just do
that. Was great radio right there. I was pointing at an object with my hand.
Okay, guys. Today we've got this. It's a fuel tanker. It's like the genuine article.
This is the first time we've done this. Look at how hazardous that is. It's a little short.
We're taking it to Munchen.
Only 12 tons. So we're going to be
I just have to say, I know how to pronounce Munich.
I'm referencing the conversation we had before.
I do love mayonnaise. I mean, we could. No, that's silly. It's a controversy.
No.
Oh no. Okay, so hey everybody, I've just got back to Brooklyn, New York, from after having spent.
He's been away
a little time away in my hometown of Portland, and so I've been aching to get more of that Josh sauce.
Here I am, with all my sauce, ready to go.
More chuckles, more giggles, more waffles, more banter as we...
And most of all, more mumbling.
Yeah, because that's what we bring to the table. And so Josh actually came to me with a subject in mind this time.
Yes. While Isaac was gone, I solved the mysteries of Vaporwave.
Yes. He. Did you text me or was it an IM?
I
figured out how I feel about Vaporwave.
Yes.
Josh said to me,
I think what I sent,
and I was like, don't spoil it.
I think what I sent you was I solved Vaporwave. I finally solved Vaporwave.
Vaporwave.
And when I said that, I thought it sounded a little too much like I figured out. I figured out how to fix Vaporwave.
No.
I figured out what it's all about.
All right, and so let's do the thing where we explain what the fuck it is that we're even talking about in the first place.
Vaporwave is a recent genre of music. You could call it a micro genre. It's rather loosely configured in that it's done entirely by internet citizens on a pseudo-anonymous basis on like websites like SoundCloud and Bandcamp. And what it tends to sound like is these days it tends to sound like disco samples or just other samples from chintzy pop music, smooth jazz, things like that.
Yep. Just like imagine the contents of an elevator or the contents of a doctor's waiting room from 20 years ago.
Except like way more tripped out. Screwed is the term they use.
That is the first. That's step one, and then step two is that you do things to it.
Yeah, usually loop it, slow it down. Sometimes kind of do some re-triggering so you can't quite get into the groove on a consistent basis. Mm-hmm. What you end up with is just an overwhelming feeling of like mouthwash in supermarkets. Right, exactly. But like the term has kind of evolved, and this is kind of where the trouble starts. The term has expanded to include lots of original music that just kind of has the
aesthetic.
The aesthetic.
We're going to come back to that word because the word aesthetic has come to mean something very specific on Tumblr, and I want to talk about that too. I think it's not unrelated to this.
It's not unrelated. People like that seems to be something Vaporwave fans like share around a lot. I haven't figured it out because, as far as I can tell, it has very little to do with anyone who actually makes Vaporwave music.
Right? No. They're cultures of consumption and cultures of production.
Right. That is the subject of today's article. I mean, it gets pretty crazy actually. Okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and say that what I figured out and what I didn't recognize at first is that Vaporwave began with a musician mostly known as One-O-Trix Point Never. Probably not pronouncing that correctly.
I would say that's correct. One-O-Trix or One-O-Trix Point Never, who is an indie darling who released some of the most critically acclaimed albums of 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah. And his music mostly doesn't have anything to do with Vaporwave. It's just kind of this dark, sampley stuff. It's pretty good. I listened to it. I like it. You should go listen to it. Probably it doesn't. But
it's now old enough that you're not going to be instantly and like irredeemably tarred with the brush of being a total hipster by listening to it.
He released an album last year. You might be a little hipster if you listen to that, but that's a good thing.
we have nothing against that. It's just like one of those things where he was for a while one of those artists where if somebody says, "Yeah, I really like 106 whenever," you kind of go.
These days, like his fans seem to hold him up as one of the greatest geniuses in music today. Which I don't know. Maybe there's something to that.
Well, he did apparently invent Vaporwave, which is the I think the point that you were
the project. The project in question is something he did under the pseudonym Chuck Person.
Great name.
That's actually the name of a basketball player, apparently. And the album he released it on a tape called Chuck Person's Eco Jams, Volume 1.
Now, is it Eco or Echo?
I believe it's probably...
How do you
I don't know.
That's a good
point.
You pronounce it Echo the Dolphin, right? Don't you?
Yeah, I believe so, because the reason Isaac is asking this is it's spelled like Eco on the cover of the tape, but it does have art from Echo the Dolphin on it, but that's spelled ECCO.
Right.
So I don't know. I would call it an Eco Jam. And basically, what the Eco Jams consisted of were, in the purest form, what we just described, like pseudo-recognizable tracks. Like the first one on the album is Toto's Africa, and Isaac didn't even recognize it.
Well, it's not Toto's Africa. It's like 5 or 10 seconds of Toto's Africa,
right.
Like deeply slowed down and muddied and looped and made into this sort of vague soaring glop.
Right, and it's like 2 cassette sides of that, so probably about an hour of it.
Mm-hmm. Not just of Toto's Africa.
No,
you get the idea
of that sort of thing. Just loops of that, and and that happened in 2009, and then it was kind of picked up in 2011 by artists under names like Vectroid, although Vectroid does it under a number of aliases.
And
Internet Club,
Macross_93.
Oh, that's later. That's later on.
Okay. I'm getting ahead of myself.
Yes.
All right.
What Vectroid and Internet Club and stuff did, there was an article about Internet Club's music in particular, which kind of a lot of Vaporwave people said this article killed Vaporwave, and this is where things get a little bit circle jerky. But we're going to mostly not touch that. What kind of happened was Internet Club saw something in this, which maybe Chuck Person did too. It's hard to say, but Internet Club decided that he wanted to. He literally compares his own music to Guy Debord's Society of the Spectacle, which is a book, a postmodernist book about how, to summarize it, I guess it's about how like genuine experiences have been replaced by ones distilled through a particular system of capitalism that he calls the spectacle.
Yes. Which is why the Wikipedia article on Vaporwave reads more like a treatise on...
a very brief one.
A brief treatise on a particular school of applied Marxist ideology than on a style of music.
Yeah.
Because this is the one article that is cited.
And it appears to have genuinely been the intention, at least for this particular wave of Vaporwave artists. Mm-hmm. And basically what they did was they did the same thing, right? They took these old chintzy pop samples, but like there was attention paid to them being kind of really hard to recognize, especially by people like Internet Club, where there's nothing like Toto's Africa in this part of things. Like it's like you can't tell which parts of what you're hearing are original and which parts are just the slowed down samples, but they're all from like the backgrounds of like public service announcements and like corporate schlocky videos, like training tapes.
Right, we're talking hold music.
Yeah, infomercials,
like stuff that was intentionally created for that in like 1982 or what have you.
It like this basically this music is taken and then defamiliarized.
Incidentally, if you want just very quick, it occurs to me, if you want a very quick explanation of what Vaporwave sounds like, imagine you're on hold forever.
Yeah.
On a not a particularly good phone.
Right. Yeah. And like a really bad connection.
On a really bad connection.
Right. Yeah, that's pretty accurate, especially when you're listening to it on a tape. But and like the kind of the idea was that through the process of defamiliarizing this music, its emotional components are drawn out, and you kind of feel yourself awash and excited about being awash in ambient capitalism.
Ambient capitalism.
But the funny thing is, after that article came out, it was actually a very impressive article, in my opinion, that really like helped legitimize this music. But then, like, despite having said all that stuff he said, Internet Club like tweeted, I'm like devastated that my music can be summed up as Marxist plunderphonics. So he thinks many would accuse this article of overselling this genre of music.
I would say that it couldn't have avoided doing that.
But according to Internet Club, it undersold it. And I almost agree with him.
Well, there is there's a couple of levels upon which to approach this, as with any art.
Yeah. Well, let me finish the history lesson before we start analyzing. So I think that particular movement of vaporwave, Vectroid's albums are all brilliant. If you ask me, Chuck Person's album is brilliant. I think that it reminds me of the dawn of abstract expressionism, right? Where the reaction was, well, I could have done that, my kid could have done that, and it's true, but no one really thought to before, and it was the process of doing it that was meaningful, and also there's a capacity to really just enjoy it and get into it and kind of experience that expression in a new way. And I find that really great. I think that is it makes you reevaluate certain base assumptions you've made about what music is and can be, which is precisely what experimental music should do. But then all those artists stop making it because the experiment happened, and there's not really a whole lot to milk there.
Yeah, but as with any new development in music, there's come the next wave.
Yes, imitators and imitators of imitators, and it's very. And the difference is there are no gatekeepers, right? The difference between this and abstract expressionism.
Right.
Everyone can and will make vaporwave. Mm-hmm. And to hear Chuck Person talk about it, he's happy about this, actually.
I would be if I were.
Yeah, totally. Internet Club is and the writer of that article is elitist, saying there's such a thing as better vaporwave and worse vaporwave.
Well,
he's not wrong.
No one's gonna dispute that,
right?
Presumably.
But then he looks at some of the new wave stuff, which samples disco and less chintzy music,
right.
Music which is genuinely good but still defamiliarized, but kind of robbed of its structural elegance,
right?
In being rendered into a loop, and the focus is no longer on anything as highly conceptual,
right,
as Marxist plunderphonics,
but
instead on the vibe.
Mr. Article came up with a cute theory about this, and now that everything is not going to his theory, he's stamping his little feet a little bit.
Sure.
But so okay,
almost
is that okay? Keep going.
Yeah, and then there's artists like Macross, whatever it is that you mentioned earlier, and I like listening to their stuff. They did an album called Sailor Wave. Anime nostalgia is now a huge part of vaporwave.
Absolutely, as it is a part of the internet culture, or the particular corner of internet culture that we hang out in general.
And here comes my analysis. I would say that this folkification of vaporwave was inevitable, obviously, because it was always such a folky thing. It's such a simple thing to make. Mm-hmm. It's a good thing because everyone's having a good time and making a lot of fun and interesting music, and it's interesting to hear a bunch of people just eagerly exploring this kind of very new and different sound, at a huge at a rapid pace. But I think there's also some truth to the concern that something has been kind of buried, because when I first started exploring vaporwave, what I discovered first, of course, was the imitators of imitators, and I enjoyed it. But it really took some digging before I figured out what the origins were. And I did find that origin point a lot more interesting in its conceptual, in its attempt to be conceptual.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, this is sort of a truth of any art school musical genre,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Is that once you have, you're pretty much powerless to control what happens to shapes that you put into a culture.
Yes.
Or ideas or sounds or thoughts. And the question that we haven't addressed about this genre so far is, does it sound good?
I would say so.
I mean, yes. I mean, I know what your answer to that is going to be. But there is this sort of a deal where music that is purely conceptual can or that where concept is the main thrust of it, listenability is not the primary concern there, right?
Right.
And so in terms of like, you know, what actually you hear and what catches you, and then if you are susceptible to the sort of thing, what funnels you into the hardcore stuff, the process of making this stuff a little bit catchier and, you know, maybe better as music, if not, you know, better as a piece of art, is very important, because you end up like stuck firmly up Marxist plunderphonics otherwise, which is ultimately no fun.
Yeah, totally.
I think.
The funny thing about Vaporwave in particular is a lot of the stuff coming out being called Vaporwave nowadays bears zero resemblance whatsoever to the original conceit.
Yeah.
It like often isn't even sample based at all anymore. Like it's entirely based around what Tumblr would call the aesthetic.
Yes.
Which is kind of a like the word vapor suddenly refers to like vapor trails left by airplanes in the LA sky, and
right. All that is
kind of a VHS tinge.
Yeah.
To everything.
All that is shimmery, distorted, and which we've talked about before on Trucks long ago. The sort of these. This is what glitch aesthetics have sort of evolved into, and it is like, I mean, and we can. And the thing about it is that, like, you know, anything that you create that is a commentary on nostalgia is also going to be a focus of nostalgia.
Yeah.
Right? And so you have a lot of people making these sort of nostalgic works about about an aesthetic that was current when they were born or just before they were born.
Yeah.
Like, my brother had the opportunity. They were at the venue that he was working for at the time, the gallery essentially that he was working for at the time. They put together they were doing a sort of retrospective showing of an installation piece from the 80s, which was like a giant bank of TVs, all of which had been, you know, in the original there were VHS tapes that had been loaded into into all of these TVs, which simultaneously played this enormous sort of, you know, bewildering mashup of visually edited like corporate logos and TV commercial samples and this stuff that would be not at all out of place within this
Vaporwave.
The Vaporwave. I'll look up what exactly that was and we'll put it in the doobly-dee. But the point is, the thing that separates it, of course, is that this object was extremely sincere. Like that it was meant to be it was meant very clearly to be an attack on mass culture and on the vapidity of it, whereas the same object today would be just sort of a luxuriating in in that feeling.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of multivalent in its stance is what I would say.
Yeah.
Like that thing tends to be inside of Vaporwave. Like it is kind of aware of how sinister it is that it finds luxuriating in that to be so enjoyable. But it still does. It's a cake have thing. Cake have eat.
Yeah, I mean and
but a successful one, I think. I mean, I don't mean to levy that term as a criticism in this case.
I think
it's an intriguing tension.
And it's like you don't need. I don't think that it is that you are obligated to question the political engagement of any kind of art.
Of course not.
And it is totally legitimate to just enjoy the distillation of this sort of thing, particularly when it has been. I mean, the essential part of it that like makes it that carries on this tradition is that it is all still free.
Yeah.
You know, and that it is all still completely democratically distributed, and the tools to make it are essentially freely available.
In fact, it's often distributed in a way which is intentionally like outmoded. Like all of Internet Club's albums were distributed on Angel Fire.
Yeah,
like inside of zip files.
Nice part of the aesthetic.
Yeah, and Vectroid's albums are now defunct Bandcamp links for the most part.
And this all fits into like this is the same impulse that drives like the Revive One cassette tapes.
Yeah, and of course Chuck Person's album was on a cassette tape.
Yeah.
It's what I feel about it as kind of a cultural moment is that it demonstrates both the value of not having gatekeepers anymore and the value that gatekeepers used to have. Because if there were still gatekeepers, it wouldn't have gotten so folkified, at least not with so much, like the folkification of it wouldn't have become the aesthetic as a whole, which is a great thing, and it's awesome that kind of thing can happen now. But also, the original ideas wouldn't have been drowned out so completely.
Well, I mean, if it's one of those things where it's like if this was still happening in a more aesthetics and more academic space, and a more curated space, then we would be intersecting with these things as commentary on the ideas involved, these new pieces, rather than just as music.
Yeah.
But that also speaks to another part of it, which is that the audience for these pieces, particularly the newest generation of them, are not people who would necessarily be interested in music that came from a curated or a intentionally academic space, right? Yeah. This is a first order movement of something that is almost entirely conceptual to something that is almost entirely public.
Yeah.
It is almost entirely cool.
Yeah.
You know? Which is how this stuff works a lot of the time, but there is no in-group you have to be a part of to enjoy this stuff.
Yeah.
Particularly, I think the first real piece of vaporwave that I encountered was that Sailor Wave album, which was getting kicked around because of the anime nostalgia connections and that sort of the really direct brushing up of straight up nerdiness with serious cool kid, artsy fartsy conceptual.
Yeah, that's definitely a cool thing to see.
It's a direct line, and I enjoy that. Now, do I enjoy the music itself? This is a question. I mean, it's anything that tells me to relax, I'm going to look at funny.
I mean, how did you like the mixtape I made?
I enjoyed it on almost purely on
on an intellectual
level. On that first order level, right?
And I made that thing before I was even aware of the original intentions.
You may be hearing that.
Maybe. I think I'm going to try and make something new for this.
Okay.
Might have some of the same material.
But regardless, you're certainly hearing it, and the street noise that you're almost certainly also hearing will probably will definitely add to the experience.
Yes. Just pretend the ambient hiss of my room is in fact a tape.
Yes, and the car alarm from before.
We put that in there on purpose.
Yeah, that was totally.
Was there a car alarm? I didn't even notice.
Yeah, no. You were totally in the zone.
Oh man.
Yeah, no. This is all aleatoric gold.
I can tell this is going to be one of those episodes where I struggle to make it so you can kind of hear the music, and I accidentally make it too loud compared to our voices.
And so if we're going to sound like this, which is going to make it really good vapor.
Yeah. I'm going to add reverb to our voices.
That is the correct thing to do.
Yeah.
So let's take this as a jumping off point and talk a little bit about the way that this has become sort of
I think I'm in serious trouble.
Oh, good.
Please go on.
As Josh drifts gently back down the hill once more, you're jackknifing yourself on purpose.
There's no way for me to move forward. It's not possible.
You're flooring it? You're in first gear and you're flooring it?
Yeah, that's right.
Well, time to get towed, I guess.
Fuck. Alright. Please.
Anyways, I was saying, there was a meme going around Tumblr lately, wherein you were...
Do you know how to pronounce meme?
Hey, guys, I totally know how to pronounce meme. Just so you know, I mean, I wouldn't want you to think that I didn't know how to pronounce meme. But anyway, there's this meme going around Tumblr, we're in Mannheim.
Yeah, Christ. It looks like exactly where we started out. For a moment, I was afraid that we lost all our progress.
We're just this is all Germany.
Yeah.
You're still on the wrong side of the street, though.
That's fine.
Mannheim Steamroller, home of Mannheim Steamroller. Anyway, Man Mountain. Jesus, where was I going? Oh yeah, there's this meme going around Tumblr that where you were supposed to describe your aesthetic in like 3 or 4 words, and everybody was having a lot of fun with this. But it's also clear that everybody knew what this meant. And one of the cool things about Tumblr in general is that you are able to specify what your blog looks and feels like to such an extent that you can tell a lot about a person, not just by what content they choose to reblog, but when you click through and look at their blog, what it looks like, what auto plays, how sparkly is it.
My blog uses a skin called the Atlantic. It looks like the Atlantic's web layout.
Yes, I cannot tell you how unhappy I am about that.
It's just a good web layout.
Mine tells you that you shouldn't be friends with me, essentially, because not only is it a minimal layout, but it puts my about section at the very bottom of the page rather than in a sidebar, which means that people don't even know what my pronouns are, and so they have no way of knowing
anything about you. They have no idea whether or not they should trust you.
Exactly. Thankfully, I mostly just give them birds, and so that works out. But you have these sort of there was this thing that was going around a while ago, the soft grunge thing and the pastel goth thing. I still love those. I know that's none of it's current anymore, but people are now moving to beyond that to individually micro curated aesthetics.
Yes.
And this is another aspect of the democratization of gatekeeping.
You know what I'm going to look like when I can completely determine my entire appearance when we've replaced our reality with a digital one?
Your avatar?
Yes, I'm going to look like a giant floating skull.
Okay. Hey man, you should read Snow Crash.
And every component of the 3D model of my skull, like the jaw, the cranium area, the brow, the area around my eyes, and my upper jaw. They're all independently going to be cycling between a gradient of neon colors.
Yeah, that's extremely aesthetic. Maybe that's what this movement is called. This movement is just called aesthetic. That
was my Second Life avatar.
I saw a car in Portland that would have made Tumblr collectively shit its pants. It had that shiny, great all over. It was somehow like a rainbow oil slick just all over the car, and it was like an 80s sedan.
Wow.
It was beautiful. Somebody is living the dream.
Wow.
So for me, we are in sort of this heyday in a way, because this is essentially, everybody is now mythologizing and celebrating the specific pop culture atmosphere of my childhood.
Right.
It is like I'm living in a Lisa Frank Trapper Keeper on certain corners of the internet. And it's all but it's all been made more beautiful.
Yeah.
Through all this repurposing and reorganization, and the proximity of art and artistic intent in it.
Yeah.
And the development of these new and interesting layers of irony. Feels like we're in Weimar Germany,
What?
No?
I just don't understand.
It's one of those things where it's one of those things that happens to civilizations in decline, is that we become very very preoccupied with minuscule gradations of aesthetic presentation.
Right, but it feels so utopian at the time.
Yeah. I mean,
the trouble with this individual aesthetic thing is that it's impossible to sustain in real life. Once you go off the internet for a second, you can wear a T-shirt that looks like your aesthetic, but that doesn't mean you can represent it in your personality.
Yeah, it goes further than that. It's you can be as you can be a gender warrior on the internet,
sure,
to your heart's content, but how much of that is going to remain a thing when you leave your mom's house,
right,
is another. But that is it was ever thus.
Yeah, and
also hipsterism. Is all about trying to bring that out. I mean, this is kind of this is sort of all just the reductio ad absurdum of the Three Wolf Moon T-shirt, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
There's a sentence. Sometimes I have to stop and regret my life.
No, I appreciate you very much, Isaac. Who else is going to say that if you don't? That's what you bring to the world.
Oh no, I brought that to the world. Yeah, no, it's interesting to. Because one of the things that is true and not as widely acknowledged as one would hope is the extent to which one's chosen look, one's chosen vibe, one's chosen aesthetic can influence what we would think of as real life practical decisions that are separate from because they all form part of an ideology. Yeah. Right? So what kind of blog palette you use can also the same process that goes into determining that can determine what city do I want to live in,
what store do I want to buy clothes from,
what store do I want to buy clothes from, how this is once again going back to the basis of this vaporware discussion. This is all about your electiveness in economic terms. It's all about the power of your economic choices.
This is exactly why spending money is determined to be expression.
Yes. So, this was brought to mind. This is a trip anecdote.
Okay.
Right. I was listening. I was stuck in a car driving back and forth between the coast and the city a number of times because I had so many goddamn weddings to go to, and the only thing that was in the car to listen to was The Crane Wife by the Decemberists. And I remembered thinking that my feeling about The Crane Wife by the Decemberists is that it sucks. And that's sort of unexamined, or had been for a long time, because I haven't listened to Decemberists in ages because I don't particularly like the Decemberists.
Sure.
Now I used to like the Decemberists, and I think that the time that I really started to distance myself aesthetically from the Decemberists was about the time when I decided that I was going to leave Portland, because the Decemberists are a Portland band, and I associated them with a particular kind of feeling in Portland, a particular kind of aesthetic gestalt.
My truck driver is definitely yawning over us right now.
Well, I mean, this is not a very entertaining anecdote.
Let's go for it.
I mean, no, it's just not, but you're going to have to deal with it. Because I was listening to this, and it was really good. It was really good. And it was doing this whole, soaring Prague opera thing that the Crane Wife does in his first couple of songs. And I was like, oh shit, did I actually, in my eagerness to disassociate myself from the feeling of being from Portland, did I actually trick myself into not liking this thing that I liked?
The answer is all the time.
Yeah.
You're doing that to yourself all the time.
One does do that. So in this case, it wasn't, because I had forgotten that about from track 3 on, the album does in fact suck, and so I was off the hook. But
I mean, you're not only doing that all the time, but you're doing the reverse all the time, and you're electing to like things that you would like yourself if you like.
Right, because they fit into this sort of elective pattern. And I mean, part of growing up, sort of classically, part of growing up and part of becoming a more mature viewer of the world and of art is to learn what you actually like. Not what you want to like. You can also change what you like.
Sure, I mean, always.
But
the fact is that there's so much good stuff to pick from.
Yeah.
That you do have some freedom in that regard.
Yeah, I'm not, and incidentally, I will go to bat for most of that album not being very good, but there's plenty of good stuff in the Decemberists catalog to love. I'm not saying that you're a dummy if you like the Decemberists by any stretch of the imagination. It's just a matter of am I going to be more, am I going to pay attention to the preciousness of this?
Yeah.
And the sort of the weird kind of gross overtones in the sort of 19th century nostalgia that it has, and the fact that there's a lot of dead women in the songs. Or am I going to pay more attention to the fact that this is super literate, super attention to detail, crafty songwriting, which is a thing that is undervalued generally and something that I like. And which of those two things you're going to pay more attention to has a lot to do with what kind of life that you want to see for yourself.
And it raises similar questions when it comes to movements like vaporwave. Like one starts to think like how many people are into vaporwave because they genuinely love the sound of it, and they did the instant they heard it, like it resonated with them on that pure musical level. And how many of them just are like really into the way the movement is shaped and structured,
or just the way it looks.
Yeah.
And if there's
like this internet community, like throwing aside their real life identities to kind of unite under this bizarre aesthetic, like that's a cool thing, and it's totally worth engaging with purely for like that.
We're definitely gonna have to like put a quarter in the swear jar every time we say the word aesthetic from here on out.
Yeah.
Or if they're 16, it's possible that stumbling upon this at this moment has in fact determined what their aesthetic. Quarter of it. That was way too loud. Sorry.
That was a good simulation. Quarter in the swear jar. It was a penny on my desk.
But that their tastes might be determined by this. And really, think of how deeply tastes go. Tastes, like your tastes can determine who you end up married to.
True.
Where you end up working, where you end up living, and all of that stuff.
It's because we're coming very close to living inside of a Huxleyan dystopia.
Well, or Snow Crash. You can just be that like pastel skull all the time. and incidentally, my final word on Vaporwave is that it isn't what I want to look like or sound like very much. I think it is closer to what Josh wants to look like or sound like.
I hope I have at least enhanced your appreciation for it by sharing the intent of some of its creators. I found that pretty interesting.
Absolutely, I found the mixtape that you made to be, which we'll link again here presumably, to be a very interesting experience, and like also it had a unity of style in it, a unity of taste, which I found appealing. But like, if you take basically the same idea, which is a deconstruction of pop music via distortion and juxtaposition, then you could almost say that Mouth Sounds has the same mission.
I absolutely think that there's a relationship there.
Yeah, and smart-ass people have said, "Is this vaporwave?"
Right.
When they were commenting on that. When I said on my blog that Mouth Sounds and Mouth Silence are, taken as a whole, probably my favorite piece of music to have come out this year, and I feel kind of bad about that, but it is, I think, true.
I don't disagree.
Yeah. Just in terms of its, if you don't know what Mouth Sounds and Mouth Silence is, Google it.
It's veering on being an important piece of work.
It's important for. This is another thing about the post-curatorial age, right? Important for whom, important for what. But I think that it would not be. I think that it would be hilarious to call it art, but also not inaccurate.
Yeah,
and that's part of the deal.
Yeah, totally.
We've talked about what the intent of Mouth Sounds and Mouth Silence is, and you said at one point that you felt that it was that
nothing can be
good, and mine
everything is insipid.
Everything is insipid, and whereas my take would be everything can be exalted.
Right.
Right. There is nothing that is so much dross that it cannot become profound.
Yeah, it does some of both.
Yeah.
It takes some dross and makes it profound, and it takes some great things like Jimi Hendrix, Nirvana, arguably.
Yeah,
makes them insipid.
It also like plays into your prejudices there. So, for example, I'm like, yes, there really isn't as much to say Jimi Hendrix, for example, as a lot of people think there is.
Sure.
Or
you wouldn't say that about Nirvana.
I wouldn't say that about Nirvana, no, but I would say that about Smells Like Teen Spirit. But anyway, regardless,
we're also linking Mouth Sounds. We didn't explain what it was. You'll find out.
It's better really if you find out for yourself. I just burned Mouth Silence and left it in my father's car when I left.
Oh wow, good move.
Yeah, I think I suggest doing that. Generally,
do it on a cassette tape if at all possible.
Yeah, if that's an option. Yeah, but my point bringing that up is that is a way to express those ideas that's closer to what I value.
Yeah.
In the sort of way that where my
aesthetics.
Oh no. Where what I value about music is like irony and cleverness, but also like precision and negative space and.
That is to be found, I think, in some examples of Vaporwave.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I would say that it's not what the genre is focused upon.
No,
but
shit, fuck, I've lost all my touch it parking.
You've lost your truck mojo.
Anyway, links in the description too. Can we remember everything?
Yeah, there was that one installation piece, which I'll ask Evan what it was.
Okay.
We may or may not get that in there before we want to put this up. Mouth Sounds and Mouth Silence, your Vaporwave mixtapes.
Both of them now, probably.
Yeah, potentially both of your Vaporwave mixtapes. And,
fuck this.
And the concept of failure, apparently.
Alright, there's your required reading for this week.
Yeah,
I'll link the article I mentioned too.
Yeah, there we go. There's all kinds of fantastic stuff going on all the time. That's sort of the
world is fascinating.
Yeah, and we love you.
Goodbye.